in the land where the first light of dawn kisses the earth. A story unfolds unlike any other. A story of storms and serenity, of swords and sakura, of destruction and rebirth. Japan, an archipelago carved by fire and water, where ancient myths breathe through whispering forests and towering shrines, where samurai once drew their blades under crimson skies, and where silence carries the weight of centuries. A nation that has risen from ashes more than once, each time stronger, sharper, more unyielding. But Japan is more than history. Is an intricate dance between tradition and innovation, where thousand-year-old temples stand beneath neon-lit skyscrapers, and where the quiet art of the tea ceremony exists alongside robots crafting the future. And yet, behind the beauty lies struggle, a fragile balance between culture and modernity, between resilience and vulnerability. To understand Japan is to step into a realm where the past and the present coexist like shadows beneath the rising sun. Tonight, we journey through the chronicles of this mysterious land, exploring its history, culture, economy, and current challenges. This is Japan, birth of a nation long before there was a Japan as we know it today. The archipelago lay shrouded in mist, untouched by the world beyond. According to legend, the islands were born when the gods Izanagi and Izanami dipped a jeweled spear into the chaotic seas and pulled forth land from the waters. This divine tale, recorded in Japan's oldest chronicles, the Kojiki and Nihon Shoki, is more than mythology. It is a cultural heartbeat, a reminder that Japan's identity has always been intertwined with the sacred and the eternal. Archaeology, however, paints a different picture. Nearly 30,000 years ago, Paleolithic hunter-gatherers first set foot on these islands, forging lives amid dense forests and volcanic plains. Then came the Jomon period, 14,000 to 300 BCE, named after the distinctive row-pattern pottery they left behind. These early people were masters of adaptation, living off the bounty of the land, crafting stone tools and forming spiritual bonds with nature. In their artifacts, we find not just survival, but the seeds of a culture destined to endure for millennia. The arrival of change around 300 BCE. The calm rhythms of Jomon life gave way to waves of transformation as migrants from the Asian mainland brought with them new tools, new technologies, and new ideas. This marked the beginning of the Yayoi period, 300 BCE to 300 CE, an era that reshaped Japan forever. Wet rice agriculture arrived, and with it came organized communities, social hierarchies, and the foundations of political power: iron and bronze. Weapons transformed warfare and rituals alike. Slowly, scattered settlements began to consolidate into powerful clans, the UG. At the same time, Japan's cultural DNA absorbed influences from China and Korea, adopting early writing systems, metallurgy, and spiritual practices. Yet even as outside ideas took root, something uniquely Japanese began to emerge: a society blending foreknowledge with deep reverence for its land, ancestors, and gods. The Yayoi people were not simply recipients of change. They were architects of a civilization destined to carve its own path. The Kofun kingdoms, by the 3rd century CE. Japan entered the Kofun period, named after the massive keyhole-shaped burial mounds that still dot the landscape today. These tombs, some larger than the Egyptian pyramids, reflect the growing power of ruling elites and hint at a society more complex than ever before. The rise of the Yamato clan, based in modern-day Nara, signaled the birth of Japan's first centralized state. Here, emperors traced their divine lineage back to the sun goddess Amaterasu, forging a political ideology that would endure for centuries. Through contact with China's dynasties, Japan absorbed Buddhism, Confucianism, and sophisticated systems of governance, yet carefully filtered them to suit its own traditions. This era laid the foundation of Japan's imperial identity. a delicate balance of imported wisdom and indigenous belief, cementing the emperor not just as a ruler, but as a living symbol of the divine. Faith and philosophy, the arrival of Buddhism. In the mid-6th century was a turning point that transcended religion and reshaped Japanese society. While the native Shinto faith celebrated the spirits of nature, the kami dwelling in trees, rivers, and mountains, Buddhism introduced profound philosophical questions about suffering, impermanence, and rebirth. Rather than displacing Shinto, Buddhism intertwined with it, creating a spiritual duality unique to Japan. Temples rose alongside shrines, monks debated philosophy, and art flourished under new inspirations. The imported writing system from China, kanji, became the backbone of Japan's earliest literature and administration, giving voice to poetry, law, and history. By the end of this era, Japan was no longer an isolated archipelago, but a budding civilization with its own written identity, philosophical soul, and cultural heartbeat. The dawn before the storm. By the 8th century, Japan stood on the threshold of greatness. In 710 CE, the imperial court moved to Haijukyo, modern-day Nara, marking the start of the Nara period and Japan's first true capital. Inspired by China's Tang dynasty, Japan embraced planned cities, bureaucratic governance, and monumental temple building. But beneath this veneer of unity, rival clans plotted. The court wrestled with corruption, and the seeds of future turmoil were sown. Even as emperors built great monuments to eternity, whispers of power struggles and rebellion grew louder. Yet, amid the intrigue, Japan's cultural soul blossomed. Its literature, art, and spiritual traditions thrived, setting the stage for the rise of the Heian era, an age of refinement, poetry, and courtly beauty, but also one where shadows of war began to gather. The story of Japan was only beginning in the year 794 CE. The imperial court relocated to Heiankyo, modern-day Kyoto, marking the dawn of an age that would shape Japan's cultural identity for centuries. Known as the Heian period, this was a time when power shifted from brute force to refinement, from battlefield conquests to the art of aesthetics. Aristocrats at court composed poetry with words as delicate as falling petals, crafted calligraphy so graceful it seemed to breathe, and adorned themselves in layered robes of silk that mirrored the changing seasons. Literature flourished, giving birth to timeless works like The Tale of Genji by Murasaki Shikibu, often hailed as the world's first true novel. But beneath the elegance lay fragility. While the court immersed itself in ritual and beauty, distant provinces began slipping from imperial control. Wealthy daimyo lords consolidated land, private militias rose, and new warriors, the samurai, emerged to enforce their master's will. As the court retreated into layers of refinement, Japan edged quietly toward an era of chaos. The rise of the samurai. By the late Heian era, Japan's aristocracy no longer held real power. It was the sword, not the brush, that decided fate. From the rugged eastern provinces came hardened warrior clans like the Taira and the Minamoto, whose rivalries would ignite one of Japan's most defining conflicts, the Genpei War 118-1185. On blood-soaked battlefields, the samurai carved their legend, their banners snapping in the wind, their blades flashing beneath crimson skies. Victory belonged to the Minamoto clan, and in 1192, Minamoto no Yoritomo was appointed shogun, establishing Japan's first Kamakura shogunate. Power shifted away from the emperor, who remained a symbolic figurehead, to the military government led by the shogun. Yet the samurai were more than warriors. They embodied a code Bushido, a fusion of loyalty, honor, and discipline that would define Japanese identity for centuries. The age of aristocratic elegance had ended. A new era, forged in steel and blood, had begun. Mongol invasions, and the fragility of power in the late 13th century. Japan faced an existential threat from beyond its shores. The Mongol Empire, having conquered vast swaths of Asia, turned its gaze upon the islands. Twice, in 1274 and 1281, massive Mongol fleets crossed the seas, bringing warriors, catapults, and foreign tactics unlike anything Japan had seen before. Yet both times, the invaders were repelled, not by human might alone, but by the legendary kamikaze, or divine winds, typhoons that shattered Mongol ships and preserved Japan's independence. The victories became mythic, but beneath the triumph lay ruin. The wars drained the treasury, weakened the shogunate, and sowed unrest among unpaid samurai. By the mid-14th century, Japan descended into chaos as rival courts and clans clashed for supremacy. This turmoil birthed the Sengoku Jidai, the age of warring states, a century-long storm of shifting alliances, burning castles, and endless betrayals. In these crucibles of fire, Japan's greatest warlords were forged, Sengoku Jidai, and the unification of Japan from the 15th to the 16th century. Japan fractured into hundreds of feuding domains, each ruled by a powerful daimyo and their loyal samurai. It was a time of relentless warfare. Provinces bled, castles burned, and peasants suffered under the weight of endless strife. Yet amidst the chaos, three extraordinary leaders emerged, each destined to reshape the nation. Oda Nobunaga, a ruthless tactician, revolutionized warfare with firearms and ambition. Uniting much of central Japan before betrayal cut his life short. His successor, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, a peasant-turned-general, completed much of the unification and even launched audacious invasions of Korea. But it was Tokugawa Ieyasu who would ultimately prevail. At the decisive Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, his forces crushed rival armies, paving the way for the Tokugawa shogunate. Under Tokugawa rule, Japan entered a new age, one of peace, stability, and isolation from the outside world. For the first time in centuries, the land rested. The Edo peace and cultural flourishing. 1603 to 1868, with Tokugawa Ieyasu's victory, came the establishment of the Edo period. Named after his capital, modern-day Tokyo, for over 250 years, Japan experienced an unprecedented era of stability under a rigid social hierarchy, samurai at the top, followed by farmers, artisans, and merchants. Foreign influence was tightly controlled under the Sakoku closed country policy, isolating Japan from most of the world while preserving its cultural integrity. Yet this isolation was not stagnation. Edo became a thriving metropolis, while art, theater, and literature blossomed in vibrant new forms. The ukiyo-e woodblock prints captured fleeting moments of beauty, geishas, kabuki actors, cherry blossoms, and Mount Fuji shaping Japan's artistic legacy. Even as the samurai retained honor, their swords grew ceremonial in a time of peace, and merchants, once dismissed, quietly grew wealthy. But beyond Japan's shores, the world was changing. The cannons of the West were coming, and Japan's long peace stood on the brink of upheaval. The Black Ships and the fall of the shogunate, 1853 to 1868, for more than 250 years. Japan stood sealed behind the walls of its self-imposed isolation, protected by the Sakoku policy of the Tokugawa shogunate. But in July 1853, the silence of Edo Bay was shattered by a sound no Japanese ear had ever heard before: the thunder of steam engines and cannon fire. For massive coal-powered warships of the United States under Commodore Matthew Perry arrived, demanding Japan open its ports to the outside world. To the Tokugawa, it was an impossible dilemma: resist and face annihilation, or yield and break centuries of policy. The unequal Treaty of Kanagawa was signed in 1854, and Japan's isolation crumbled. Discontent rippled across the nation. Samurai, once the proud protectors of a closed land, saw their authority eroded. Merchants resented foreign privileges, and reformists whispered a radical idea: revere the emperor, expel the barbarians. By 1868, after years of political upheaval and bloody clashes, the Tokugawa shogunate fell. The emperor, a figure long symbolic but powerless, returned to prominence. The new era had a name, Meiji, meaning enlightened rule, but enlightenment would come at a cost. The Meiji Restoration and Rapid Modernization. 1868 to 1912, the Meiji Restoration transformed Japan with unprecedented speed. Determined to resist Western domination, the new leadership embarked on an ambitious campaign to modernize every aspect of society. Samurai privileges were abolished. Railways and telegraph lines stitched the islands together, and a Western-style constitution reshaped governance. Industries rose where rice fields once stood. Shipyards, steelworks, and textile mills powered Japan's entry into the industrial age. Students were sent abroad to learn science and engineering, while foreign experts were invited to teach modern techniques at home. Yet modernization was not merely imitation. Japan blended Western innovations with its own traditions, forging a hybrid identity, modern but uniquely Japanese. By the dawn of the 20th century, Japan had become the first Asian nation to rival Western powers. Its victory over China in the First Sino-Japanese War, 1894–95, and the stunning defeat of Russia in the Russo-Japanese War, 1904–05, announced its arrival on the global stage. But power brought ambition, and ambition carried shadows. Empire rising. The road to war 1912–1937. With modernization came imperial hunger. Japan's leaders believed survival demanded expansion, and their gaze turned outward to Korea, Manchuria, and beyond. The Taisho era, 1912–1926, saw growing political freedoms and urban modernization. Yet economic instability and social unrest brewed beneath the surface. The Great Kanto earthquake of 1923 devastated Tokyo and Yokohama, leaving more than 100,000 dead, fueling nationalist fervor and distrust of outsiders. As the Shua era began under Emperor Hirohito in 1926, militarists tightened their grip on government. In 1931, Japan invaded Manchuria, setting off international condemnation but emboldening its army. By 1937, full-scale war erupted with China. Atrocities like the Nanjing Massacre marked Japan's descent into brutality. The nation, once a humble island kingdom, now stood as an industrial and military giant. But its ambitions would soon collide with forces far greater than itself. The Pacific Inferno, World War II, 1937–1945. The storm broke on December 7, 1941. When Japanese planes roared over Pearl Harbor, striking the U.S. Pacific Fleet in a surprise attack that sent shockwaves around the globe. For a time, Japan's empire stretched from Manchuria to the Philippines, from Burma to the Solomon Islands. Yet as the war dragged on, the tide turned. The United States, with its vast resources and relentless industrial power, struck back island by island. Fierce battles at Midway, Guadalcanal, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa pushed Japan to the brink. By 1945, its cities burned under relentless air raids. Tokyo was reduced to ashes, Hiroshima and Nagasaki obliterated by atomic bombs. On August 15, 1945, Emperor Hirohito's voice, rarely heard by his people, trembled over the radio as he announced Japan's surrender. The land of the rising sun lay in ruins. Millions were dead, cities destroyed, and an entire identity shattered. Yet within the embers of defeat, seeds of rebirth were already taking root. From ashes to innovation, post-war miracle 1945 to 1970s under American occupation. Japan faced its deepest transformation yet. The new Constitution of 1947 stripped the emperor of political power, renounced war, and enshrined democratic principles. Land reforms empowered farmers, while investments in education and infrastructure rebuilt the nation from the ground up. The United States, seeking a strong ally in Asia during the Cold War, poured aid into Japan's reconstruction. By the 1950s, Japanese industries revived, exporting textiles, electronics, and automobiles. The 1964 Tokyo Olympics symbolized Japan's resurgence, dazzling the world with technological prowess and newfound confidence. In just 2 decades, Japan evolved from war-torn ruins into an economic miracle, a nation where bullet trains streaked across the countryside, and innovation became synonymous with national identity. Yet prosperity brought new pressures, balancing rapid modernization with cultural roots, and reconciling the shadow of its wartime past with its aspirations for peace. Japan had risen again, not as a conqueror, but as a creator. The living language of a nation language is more than communication. It is memory, identity, and soul. The Japanese language, with its elegant syllables and layered meanings, reflects the country's intricate balance between simplicity and depth. Its writing system, a mesmerizing blend of kanji Chinese characters, hiragana, and katakana, is a living canvas where history meets artistry. Kanji carries the weight of millennial meanings. Hiragana softens words with flowing grace. Katakana whispers of modernity, adapting foreign ideas into Japanese expression. To speak Japanese is to breathe rhythm and pause, silence and sound. There are phrases that cannot be perfectly translated, like wabi-sabi, the beauty found in imperfection, or mono no aware, the bittersweet awareness of life's fleeting moments. These concepts shape not only language, but philosophy, art, and literature. In every carefully chosen word, Japan reveals its character, precise yet poetic, restrained yet profound. Through language, one hears echoes of Shinto chants, Zen koans, courtly whispers, and modern street slang, all coexisting as Japan itself does. Between past and future, poetry of the seasons, Japan's literary spirit. Japan's literary tradition stretches back over 1,000 years, its roots entwined with the rhythms of nature and the emotions of the human heart. In the Heian period, aristocrats recorded their desires and sorrows in delicate verses, known as waka, short poems of just 31 syllables, yet vast in meaning. Later evolved the haiku, perfected by masters like Matsu, Basho, whose simple shi-syllable meditations captured eternity in a single breath. An old, silent pond. Frog jumps into the water. Sound of the splash. Literature became a mirror of society. In the tale of Genji, written in the 11th century by Murasaki Shikibu, we glimpse a world of courtly romance and intrigue, a masterpiece often called the world's first novel. Over centuries, Japanese literature evolved but retained its intimacy with nature, its reverence for impermanence. From the warrior epics of the Kamakura era to the modern works of Haruki Murakami, Japanese writers invite us not only to read their stories, but to feel their silences. Here, narrative is not just entertainment, it is meditation. The brush and the soul, calligraphy and painting in Japan. The written word transcends mere utility. It becomes art shadow, or the way of writing is the meditative practice of calligraphy, where each brushstroke captures a fleeting moment of the artist's spirit. A single character written in ink can embody strength or fragility, discipline or chaos. Similarly, Sumi ink painting distills the essence of nature into stark contrasts of black and white, revealing depth through emptiness. Rooted in Zen philosophy, Sumi seeks not to replicate reality, but to suggest it, leaving space for the imagination to wander. Over centuries, Japanese painting evolved, from religious mandalas to ukiyo-e, the pictures of the floating world. These vibrant woodblock prints, perfected by masters like Katsushika, Hakusai, and Utagawa Hiroshige, depicted kabuki actors, courtesans, landscapes, and everyday life with striking elegance. Hokusai's iconic Great Wave off Kanagawa still crashes eternally across oceans and cultures, a reminder of humanity's fragile dance with nature's power. In Japan, art is not bound by walls or museums. It breathes in scrolls, prints, and even seasonal greetings. The stage of dreams, performing arts, and storytelling Japanese performing arts are windows into the nation's collective memory, balancing solemnity and spectacle. No theater, born in the 14th century, is slow, symbolic, and meditative actors wearing carved masks glide across a bare stage as haunting chants and drums echo through the silence. Every gesture is deliberate, every pause filled with meaning. In contrast, kabuki, which emerged in the Edo period, explodes with energy, colorful costumes, exaggerated expressions, and dramatic narratives draw audiences into tales of love, revenge, and betrayal. Meanwhile, Bunraku Puppet Theater elevates craftsmanship to poetry, where intricate dolls, manipulated by unseen masters, come alive with astonishing emotion. These forms are not relics. They are living traditions, performed today with the same reverence as centuries ago. Through theater, Japan preserves its legends, its heroes, its tragedies. Every play is a dialogue between past and present, between the spirits of ancestors and the dreams of modern audiences. Art in motion. From tradition to modernity, Japan's cultural heartbeat lies in its ability to harmonize the ancient with the new, and nowhere is this more evident than in its modern art forms. Today, anime and manga, once dismissed as mere entertainment, have become global cultural forces. They inherit Japan's storytelling traditions, blending visual artistry with emotional depth. From the gentle worlds of Studio Ghibli films like Spirited Away to the existential questions of Akira and Ghost in the Shell, anime explores themes of identity, impermanence, and the human condition. Echoes of Haiku and Yukio, Reborn 4. A digital age, manga too, carries narratives that range from intimate dramas to sprawling epics, transcending borders and languages. Yet modernity does not erase heritage, it reinterprets it. Whether through a calligrapher's ink, a no-actor's mask, or a cyberpunk skyline in Tokyo, Japanese art remains a living dialogue between serenity and chaos, tradition and transformation, memory and imagination. The sacred and the seasonal in Japan. The changing of seasons is more than a shift in whether it is a celebration of life itself. Nature is not distant here. It is woven into identity, ritual, and spirituality. In spring, as the sakura bloom, the nation pauses for hanami, the centuries-old tradition of gathering beneath cherry trees to admire their fleeting blossoms. Families, friends, and strangers sit on blue tarps under pink canopies, laughing, drinking sake, and breathing in the poetry of impermanence. This is mono no aware, the awareness that beauty exists because it fades. In autumn, the fiery reds of momiji maple leaves are revered with equal devotion, drawing pilgrims to temples nestled in mountainsides. Festivals mark these seasonal transitions, blending Shinto beliefs with communal joy. Each event, from Setsuban, when roasted beans are thrown to drive out demons, to Tanabata, where wishes are written on colored paper and tied to bamboo branches, reflects Japan's deep harmony with nature. The passage of time is not feared here. It is embraced, ritualized, and celebrated. Shinto and the spirit world, that's the heart of Japan's spiritual identity, lies Shinto, the way of the gods, an ancient faith rooted in reverence for nature and the unseen. Shinto has no sacred scripture, no single founder, no dogma. Instead, it celebrates the divine presence, the kami believed to dwell in rivers, mountains, trees, and even the whisper of the wind. Every shrine, from the Grandai's Jingu to a tiny wooden altar on a village road, is a gateway to the spiritual realm. Visitors purify their hands and mouths before stepping through torii gates, symbols marking the boundary between the mortal and divine. Here, rituals of gratitude and renewal unfold. Bells ring, offerings are made, and prayers flutter on wooden plaques called ima. Yet Shinto coexists seamlessly with Buddhism, introduced centuries ago from China and Korea. Together, these two traditions shape Japan's worldview. Shinto celebrates life, birth, and joy, while Buddhism contemplates suffering, impermanence, and the soul's journey beyond. In Japan, spirituality is not a set of beliefs, it is a way of being. Festivals of light and fire. Japan's festivals, or Matsuri, are living theaters where spirituality meets celebration, and every city, town, and village tells its own story through ritual. During Gyota Matsuri in Kyoto, massive floats adorned with intricate tapestries parade through narrow streets, carrying centuries-old traditions on their wooden wheels. In Aomori, the Nobuta Matsuri lights up the night with towering lantern floats, shaped like warriors and mythical creatures glowing against the summer sky. Winter brings the Sapporo Snow Festival, where artists carve cathedrals of ice and towering sculptures from frozen blocks, transforming the city into a glittering wonderland. Some festivals are deeply solemn, like Obon, when families return to their ancestral homes to honor the spirits of the dead, lighting lanterns that drift down rivers into the night. Others, like Hanabi Teikai, are bursts of joy, fireworks blooming above Tokyo Bay, mirrored in the faces of millions who watch in awe. Each Matsuri is more than entertainment. It is a bridge between generations, between the living and the spirits, between history and the present moment. Rituals of everyday life. Japanese traditions are not confined to temples or festivals. They flow quietly through daily life, shaping gestures, manners, and habits. The simple act of bowing, for example, carries layers of meaning: respect, apology, gratitude, greeting conveyed without a single word. Meals begin with a humble itadakimasu, I humbly receive, and end with gochisuzama deshita, thank you for the feast, reflecting gratitude not just to the cook, but to the life taken to nourish one's own. In tea rooms across the country, the chanowu, or tea ceremony, unfolds as a choreography of mindfulness. Every motion deliberate, every sound intentional, every silence sacred. Tatami rooms, sliding sheiji doors, and tokonoma alcoves designed to display seasonal scrolls and flowers embody wabi-sabi, the quiet beauty of simplicity and imperfection. Even in the bustle of neon-lit Tokyo streets, you'll find moments of stillness. An office worker pausing beneath a shrine gate, a student tying a wish on a sacred tree, a commuter listening to cicadas in summer heat. In Japan, tradition whispers constantly. Even in the roar of modernity, harmony between past and present. What makes Japan's traditions remarkable is not their preservation alone, but their seamless integration into modern life. Ancient shrines stand beside skyscrapers. Centuries-old festivals thrive amid bullet trains and smartphones. And Shinto priests bless both rice fields and newly launched satellites. The Japanese concept of wa-harmony binds these contradictions together, creating a society where heritage is not replaced by progress but woven into it. A Tokyo teenager may watch anime on a smartphone while wearing a yukata to a summer festival. A Buddhist monk may live-stream morning chants from a 1,000-year-old temple. In Japan, modernity enhances tradition rather than erases it, making culture a living continuum rather than a relic of the past. This balance, fragile yet resilient, is perhaps the secret of Japan's enduring allure. To walk its streets is to witness history breathing, not behind glass, but in the present moment. Tradition here is not nostalgia. It is life itself. Temples of time, the architecture of memory. In Japan, architecture is not merely built. It is breathed into existence. A dialogue between humanity and nature. Wooden temples rise like prayers turned solid, their beams designed to flex with earthquakes, their roofs curved like waves frozen in motion. The Grand Tadaji Temple in Nara houses the world's largest bronze Buddha, a silent guardian beneath towering eaves. The Kinkakuji in Kyoto, the famed golden pavilion, shimmers above its reflective pond, a vision of harmony where architecture dissolves into landscape. In contrast, the austere rock gardens of Ryoanji invite meditation, where emptiness speaks louder than form. Castles, too, tell their stories. The white towers of Himeji Castle, known as the White Heron, soar gracefully above moats and stone walls, remnants of an age of samurai and sieges. Yet, modern Japan dares to innovate. Tokyo's skyline pierces the clouds with architectural marvels like the Tokyo Skyyo, while Kengokuma's sustainable wooden designs reinterpret tradition for a new era. Here, history and futurism coexist seamlessly. In Japan, every structure, ancient shrine or glass skyscraper, is a chapter in a single, ongoing story. A culinary journey through the seasons. To taste Japan is to taste its philosophy, simplicity, seasonality, and reverence for ingredients. The concept of washoku, harmony of food, earned UNESCO recognition as an intangible cultural heritage, and for good reason. Japanese cuisine is a celebration of nature cycles. In spring, delicate sakura mochi wrapped in cherry leaves whisper of renewal. In summer, chilled summon noodles cool the heat. Autumn brings earthy matsutake mushrooms, while winter comforts with steaming nabe hot pots. At its heart lies sushi, an art form where precision meets patience. Every slice of fish, a meditation on balance. But beyond the refined street food thrives the sizzling okonomiyaki pancakes of Osaka, skewered yakitori from smoky alleyways, and the ramen shops where broth simmers for days, pulling strangers into intimate silence over steaming bowls. Meals are not rushed. They are rituals, beginning with gratitude itadakimosu, and ending with reflection gochisu sama deshita. Through food, Japan teaches a quiet lesson. Perfection lies not in excess, but in honoring the essence of every fleeting season. Gardens, tea, and the art of stillness. Japanese gardens are sanctuaries where time slows and silence speaks. Every stone, every ripple in the sand, every placement of moss carries intention. The Karasansui, or dry Zen gardens, like those at Ryoanji, create entire landscapes from raked gravel and scattered rocks, evoking mountains and rivers without using water at all. In contrast, strolling gardens such as Kenroku-in Kanazawa invite movement. Winding paths reveal ponds, lanterns, and bridges as though nature itself were unveiling secrets one step at a time. Complementing these gardens is the ancient ritual of the tea ceremony, or chanoyu. Within tatami-matted rooms, guests kneel as hosts prepare matcha with deliberate grace. Every gesture, from whisking the tea to rotating the cup, carries layers of mindfulness and respect. Here, wabi-sabi, the beauty of imperfection, comes alive, reminding us that serenity is found not in controlling life, but in accepting its transience. In the rush of modernity, these practices endure, offering Japan and the world a refuge of stillness amid chaos. The global language of pop culture in recent decades, Japan's influence on global culture has exploded, transcending borders and generations. Anime and manga, once niche subcultures, now command worldwide audiences. From the whimsical wonder of Studio Ghibli's My Neighbor Totoro to the dystopian brilliance of Akira and the philosophical depth of Ghost in the Shell, Japanese animation explores themes of identity, impermanence, and humanity's place in the cosmos. Manga, too, speaks a universal language, telling stories that range from intimate love dramas to vast fantasy epics like One Piece and Attack on Titan. Beyond the page and screen, Japan reshaped entertainment through gaming from the birth Of Nintendo's Mario to the immersive worlds of Final Fantasy, Zelda, and Pikmin. These creations blend storytelling, artistry, and innovation, connecting millions across the globe. Japanese pop culture is more than entertainment. It is an expression of values, perseverance, harmony, and curiosity, packaged in forms that speak to the dreams of a connected planet, where past meets future. Nowhere else on Earth does tradition and modernity coexist so seamlessly as in Japan. Here, you can leave a 1,000-year-old shrine and step directly into a high-tech cafe where robots serve latte art. Ancient kabuki theaters stand a subway ride away from Akihabara's neon-lit labyrinth of gaming arcades and anime stores. A tea ceremony might share the same city block as a startup designing AI companions. This harmony is not accidental. It is Japan's cultural genius. By preserving its heritage while embracing innovation, Japan has created a dynamic identity. One foot rooted deeply in the past, the other striding confidently into the future. It is this duality that fascinates the world. It's a society where the delicate art of arranging flowers ikebana exists alongside humanoid robots, where silence in a Zen garden resonates as profoundly as the roar of Shibuya crossing. Japan invites us to imagine a future where tradition does not fade, it evolves. The gift and curse of the island's Japan's economy was born from its geography. A double-edged sword of blessings and hardships. An archipelago of over 6,800 islands. Japan stretches like a crescent moon along the Pacific, where tectonic forces sculpt towering mountains and fertile valleys. Nearly 70% of the land is rugged and uninhabitable, leaving precious little space for agriculture or settlement. Yet, from scarcity came innovation. The Japanese people learned to work with nature, not against it. Rivers fed rice paddies carved into terraced hillsides, while volcanic soil nurtured rich harvests. Beneath the mountains, however, Japan's Earth held few natural resources, no vast oil reserves, limited coal, and scarce metals. For centuries, this scarcity shaped Japan's destiny, forcing its people to rely on discipline, ingenuity, and trade. The island's isolation also served as a shield, preserving unique traditions but limiting access to the wider world. Surrounded by tempestuous seas, Japan became both a world apart and a crossroads of cultures, where resilience was not optional. It was survival. Rice, the soul of an economy long before Japan became an industrial powerhouse. Its economy revolved around a single grain, rice. Introduced from the Asian mainland around 300 BCE, rice cultivation transformed Japan's society, shaping everything from settlement patterns to spiritual beliefs. The fertile plains of Kyushu, Honshu, and the Kanto Basin became vast seas of shimmering green in summer, their bounty sustaining villages and fueling population growth. Rice was not merely food, it was currency. During the feudal era, a samurai's stipend was measured not in coins but in koku, the amount of rice needed to feed one person for a year. Temples and shrines performed rituals to ensure good harvests, linking agriculture to spirituality. Over centuries, rice became synonymous with community and identity. Even today, modern Japan honors this legacy. Family-owned farms persist, and festivals like Inaho Matsuri celebrate the planting and harvesting of rice. To understand Japan's economic journey, one must first understand this humble grain, the foundation upon which everything else was built. Silk roads of the sea. While Japan's mountains restricted overland trade, the sea became its lifeline. As early as the Yayoi period, fishing villages dotted the coasts, thriving on the bounty of the Pacific and Japan Sea. By the Asuka and Nara periods, 6th-8th centuries, Japan had begun forging connections with China and Korea, importing advanced technologies, Buddhist scriptures, and luxury goods like silk and ceramics. In exchange, Japan exported pearls, timber, and, later, its own prized silks. These maritime trade routes became Japan's first Silk Roads, transforming coastal towns into bustling marketplaces. The Seto Inland Sea, sheltered from typhoons, became a corridor of commerce linking Kyoto, Osaka, and beyond. Yet Japan also guarded its autonomy fiercely by the 17th century. Under the Tokugawa shogunate, foreign trade was tightly controlled, restricted to specific ports like Nagasaki, where Dutch and Chinese merchants brought glimpses of a wider world. Through the ebb and flow of openness and isolation, Japan mastered the art of selective exchange, taking what it needed, while preserving its identity, the fisherman's wealth for an island nation. The sea has always been both provider and protector. Japan's vast coastline, stretching over 29,000 kilometers, nurtured a profound connection to the ocean. Fish became a cornerstone of the Japanese diet, sustaining populations when arable land was scarce. Villages specialized in harvesting tuna, mackerel, sardines, and seaweed, while coastal communities developed intricate preservation techniques like drying, fermenting, and salting, laying the groundwork for culinary traditions that still thrive today. Beyond sustenance, fishing supported local economies and enabled trade networks that reached deep inland. Pearl diving, too, became a source of wealth, with the AMA divers, often women descending into cold waters to retrieve treasures from the seabed, a practice that continues to this day. But the sea also demanded respect. Typhoons, tsunamis, and rough currents claimed countless lives, shaping a cultural ethos of reverence and humility before nature's power. In Japan's early economy, the ocean was more than a resource. It was a partner, a teacher, and sometimes an unforgiving master. Seeds of innovation. Japan's economic story begins with constraint, scarce land, limited resources, and geographic isolation. Yet these very challenges sparked a culture of innovation that would later propel the nation onto the world stage. To survive, communities developed intricate systems of water management, engineering terraced rice paddies that transformed mountains into fertile farmland. Farmers honed techniques of crop rotation and sustainable forestry, ensuring long-term yields from limited terrain. Fishing methods evolved with precision, and small-scale artisans perfected crafts like pottery, textiles, and sword-making goods that would one day command global admiration. Even in its earliest stages, Japan's economy reflected a mindset that prized efficiency, quality, and adaptability. These seeds, planted centuries ago, would later blossom into the traits that define Japan's modern miracle: meticulous craftsmanship, relentless discipline, and the courage to reinvent itself when faced with crisis. Japan's economic roots run deep, nourished by hardship, strengthened by ingenuity, and intertwined with the very identity of its people. Awakening of an industrial nation. The mid-19th century was a turning point in Japan's economic destiny. For over 2 centuries, under the Tokugawa shogunate, Japan had lived in deliberate isolation, its ports closed to foreign influence and its traditions fiercely guarded. But in 1853, the arrival of Commodore Matthew Perry's black ships shattered that isolation. Faced with the reality of Western military and technological superiority, Japan had a choice: submit or transform. In the decades that followed, the Meiji Restoration of 1868 ignited a national revolution unlike anything the world had seen. Samurai laid down their swords as Japan dismantled its feudal system, embracing modernization at lightning speed. Railways stitched islands together, steamships carried goods across oceans, and factories rose where rice paddies once stood. Borrowing ideas from Britain's textile mills, Germany's steel plants, and America's education system, Japan absorbed, adapted, and innovated. Within a generation, the nation leaped from medieval agrarian society to industrial power. It was as if Japan had compressed centuries of progress into a single lifetime. fueled by an unshakable resolve to never again be left behind. Forging an empire. Industrialization was not just about factories and machines. It reshaped Japan's ambitions and identity. By the early 20th century, the nation had transformed into a formidable imperial power. Newly built shipyards churned out modern naval fleets, and advanced weaponry gave Japan an edge on the battlefield. Victories in the First Sino-Japanese War, 1894, and the Russo-Japanese War, 1904, stunned the world, marking Japan's emergence as the first Asian nation to defeat a European power in modern warfare. But this rapid ascent carried a cost. As Japan's appetite for resources grew, it turned outward, seeking coal, iron, and oil in neighboring lands. Korea, Taiwan, and parts of Manchuria became extensions of Japan's economic engine. By the 1930s, Japan's empire stretched deep into Asia, powered by ambition and industrial might. Yet, beneath this expansion lay a volatile mix of nationalism and resource dependency, a path that would eventually lead to devastating conflict. The pursuit of economic dominance had transformed Japan, but it also set the stage for a confrontation that would change the course of its history forever. Ashes of defeat. The Second World War brought Japan's meteoric rise crashing down in flames. By 1945, after years of brutal warfare, the nation lay in ruins. Cities like Tokyo, Hiroshima, and Nagasaki were reduced to rubble. Factories, railways, and ports destroyed. Farmlands scorched. Millions were homeless, and food shortages gripped the islands. But perhaps the deepest wound was psychological. The atomic bombings had left scars, not just on the land, but on the Japanese spirit, shaking a centuries-old belief in divine destiny. For many nations, such devastation might have meant surrender not just on the battlefield, but in identity. Yet, from this crucible of suffering, a new Japan was born. Under U.S. occupation, sweeping reforms reshaped the nation. A new constitution, land redistribution, and the dismantling of zaibatsu conglomerates paved the way for democracy and innovation. Where once there had been imperial ambition, now there was collective determination. The Japanese people, scarred but unbroken, looked at their shattered homeland and whispered a single vow: "We will rise again." The economic miracle, what followed between the 1950s and 1980s, remains one of the most astonishing transformations in human history, a period now known as the Japanese economic miracle. With limited natural resources and a ruined infrastructure, Japan rebuilt itself with a clarity of purpose unmatched in the modern era. Guided by visionary policymakers and supported by U.S. economic aid, Japan invested heavily in education, technology, and manufacturing. State-of-the-art factories emerged, powered by precision engineering and an obsession with quality control. Companies like Toyota, Sony, Panasonic, and Honda became global icons, redefining standards of craftsmanship and reliability. The Japanese work ethic, kasen, or continuous improvement, became a philosophy that resonated worldwide. By the 1980s, Japan had become the second-largest economy on Earth, its skyscrapers towering over Tokyo, its exports flooding every corner of the globe. Where once Japan had risen through conquest, it now conquered through innovation. The rising sun had found a new way to shine brighter than ever before. Shadows beneath the shine yet. Even at the height of its success, cracks began to appear beneath Japan's glittering economic facade. The very forces that fueled growth, relentless expansion, speculative investment, and technological ambition, created vulnerabilities. In the late 1980s, a massive asset bubble inflated as real estate and stock market prices soared beyond reason. When the bubble burst in the early 1990s, Japan plunged into what became known as the lost decade. Banks collapsed, wages stagnated, and consumer confidence evaporated. Yet, true to its history, Japan refused to yield. It doubled down on innovation, spearheading advancements in robotics, electronics, and automotive engineering. While rebuilding its financial systems from the ground up, this era marked a profound shift in Japan's economic identity. No longer chasing imperial ambitions or breakneck growth, the nation embraced sustainability, precision, and technological leadership. Japan had risen from the ashes once, and in doing so, it had discovered a deeper strength, the power to reinvent itself again and again. The global tech powerhouse by the dawn of the 21st century, Japan had secured its position as one of the world's most technologically advanced economies. Tokyo's skyline glittered with neon dreams, and its bullet trains whispered across the countryside at near-futuristic speeds. Companies like Sony, Canon, Toyota, Mitsubishi, and Nintendo became synonymous with cutting-edge design, precision engineering, and global influence. Japan dominated industries ranging from automotive manufacturing to consumer electronics, setting benchmarks the rest of the world raced to catch. Tokyo emerged as a financial nerve center, with the Tokyo Stock Exchange becoming one of the largest and most influential markets globally. Yet Japan's success was not just measured in numbers, it was reflected in its philosophy of perfection. The nation's devotion to Kaizen, continuous incremental improvement, reshaped business cultures far beyond its borders. In robotics, AI, and advanced materials, Japan didn't merely compete. It led the frontier, and yet, beneath the dazzling surface, challenges were brewing, ones not easily solved by innovation alone. The weight of an aging nation for all its technological triumphs. Japan faces a silent but formidable crisis: demographics. The nation's birth rate has plummeted to one of the lowest in the world, while its population continues to age at an unprecedented rate. More than 28% of Japanese citizens are now over the age of 65, making Japan the oldest major economy on Earth. This seismic shift strains nearly every pillar of society. A shrinking workforce struggles to sustain productivity. Healthcare systems groan under rising demand, and rural villages face abandonment as younger generations flock to urban centers. To counter these trends, Japan has turned increasingly to automation and robotics, pioneering humanoid assistants in hospitals, driverless logistics systems, and AI-powered care solutions. Yet, even as technology fills the gaps, the question looms: can machines truly replace the vitality of human generations? Japan stands at a crossroads, a society balancing the wisdom of its elders with the urgent need to redefine its future. The battle for sustainability. Japan's economy has also had to confront another existential challenge: sustainability. The nation imports over 90% of its energy resources, making it uniquely vulnerable to global market shocks and geopolitical tensions. The Arlene E. Tohoku earthquake and subsequent Fukushima nuclear disaster shattered Japan's confidence in nuclear power, forcing the country to rethink its energy policies. Since then, Japan has invested heavily in renewable technologies, becoming a global leader in hydrogen fuel cells, solar power, and smart grid systems. Automakers like Toyota and Honda have pioneered hydrogen-powered vehicles, envisioning a carbon-neutral future. Yet progress comes with tension. Balancing environmental responsibility with economic competitiveness has proven a delicate act. In a rapidly warming world, Japan's response to climate change carries global implications. Will the land of the rising sun emerge as a beacon of sustainable innovation, or will it be weighed down by its dependence on imported energy and industrial demands? Japan in the global arena. Despite its domestic challenges, Japan remains an economic titan on the world stage. It is the third largest economy after the United States and China, an anchor of stability in Asia's volatile geopolitical landscape. Through frameworks like the Comprehensive and Progressive Agreement for Trans-Pacific Partnership (CPTP) and its influence within the G7, Japan has positioned itself as a champion of free trade, technological cooperation, and democratic values. Its rivalry and partnership with China shape not only regional dynamics but also global supply chains. Meanwhile, its alliance with the United States strengthens its defense and economic clout, ensuring its voice resonates far beyond its shores. As the world races toward the Fourth Industrial Revolution, Japan stands as a critical bridge between the tradition of the East and the innovation of the West. It is a nation whose choices will ripple through the global economy from semiconductors to space exploration. The unwritten future Japan today is a paradox, a nation at the cutting edge of technological innovation, yet bound by the weight of demographic decline. An economy deeply rooted in tradition, yet constantly reinventing itself to stay relevant in a fast-changing world. From the rice paddies of ancient Yoye farmers to the eye-driven laboratories of modern Tokyo, Japan's journey has always been defined by resilience. The spirit of the samurai still whispers through its people a quiet determination to adapt, endure, and rise again, no matter the obstacle. As it faces the future, Japan is betting on creativity, sustainability, and global leadership to carve a new path. The world watches closely, for the story of Japan has never belonged to Japan alone. It is a story of human perseverance, a reminder that even in the face of profound challenges, a nation like its rising sun can shine anew each day. A nation between shadows and light, the Japan of today is a nation suspended between ancient traditions and modern aspirations. A country standing at the threshold of transformation, yet bound by the weight of its history. In the neon-lit alleys of Shibuya and beneath the timeless cherry blossoms of Kyoto, Japans coexist, one rooted in rituals centuries old, the other racing toward a digital, interconnected future. At the heart of this tension lies the question of identity. After centuries of isolation, defeat, and rebirth, Japan is still redefining what it means to be a global power in the 21st century. Its people navigate an intricate dance, revering the past while striving to lead the future. Political debates intensify around the role of the emperor. The reinterpretation of the pacifist Article 9 of the Constitution, and Japan's willingness to take a more assertive stance on the world stage. And as its leaders wrestle with these choices, the soul of Japan, forged by both honor and survival, hangs delicately in the balance. The battle for leadership. Modern Japanese politics is a realm of shifting alliances, power struggles, and generational divides. The Liberal Democratic Party, LDP, dominant for decades, faces mounting pressure from a populace demanding transparency, reform, and innovation. Prime ministers rise and fall with dizzying frequency, reflecting a deeper uncertainty within the system. There is a growing call to redefine Japan's global role. Should it remain a pacifist observer, sheltered under the U.S. security umbrella, or should it reclaim a proactive stance in shaping Asia's destiny? Defense spending has steadily increased, a controversial move in a country where memories of World War II still linger painfully. At the same time, domestic challenges, economic stagnation, demographic decline, and natural disasters test the government's ability to respond effectively. The political discourse has never been more urgent. Can Japan's leaders rise above bureaucracy and factionalism to guide the nation through the storms ahead? Or will inertia hold the country hostage to its past, strains on society beneath? The polished exterior of Japan's technological marvels lies a society wrestling with profound challenges. The pressures of overwork and the relentless pursuit of perfection have given rise to a phenomenon known as karoshi, death by overwork. Loneliness has become an epidemic, particularly among the elderly and younger generations, alienated by hyper-competitive systems. Japan's urban centers thrum with life, yet in rural landscapes, entire villages vanish into silence as populations dwindle. The tension between individual expression and collective harmony creates invisible battles in daily life, and yet, there is resilience. grassroots movements, artists, educators, and innovators are redefining what it means to live, connect, and thrive in modern Japan. Here lies the nation's paradox, a society that celebrates harmony but struggles with isolation, a culture that cherishes community but grapples with fragmentation. How Japan addresses these fractures will determine not just its domestic stability, but its global cultural influence in the decades to come. Rising threats and regional tensions. Japan's geographic position places it at the epicenter of Asia's strategic chessboard. To the west, China's growing assertiveness in the East China Sea sparks territorial disputes over the Senkaku Islands. To the north, North Korea's nuclear ambitions cast a shadow of instability as missile tests periodically shatter Japan's sense of security. Across the Pacific, its alliance with the United States remains the cornerstone of defense policy. Yet debates rage about the risks of over-reliance on Washington. Meanwhile, Japan quietly strengthens ties with Australia, India, and Southeast Asia, forging the Quad alliance to counterbalance China's influence. The stakes are high. The decisions made in Tokyo resonate far beyond its borders, shaping the security architecture of the entire Indo-Pacific. In an era where economic power and military might intertwine, Japan can no longer afford to remain a silent observer. Its destiny is tied not just to its islands, but to the shifting tides of global geopolitics, a nation searching for its voice amid all these pressures. Japan stands at an existential crossroads. Who will it become in the 21st century? The choices it faces, political, social, and cultural, are not merely strategic, but deeply personal. Will it lean into its technological supremacy and become a pioneer of the AI-driven future? Will it reconcile its pacifist constitution with growing security concerns? And most importantly, can it overcome its demographic, economic, and social challenges to inspire a new vision of Japanese identity? Across the islands, whispers of change ripple through every corner. In Tokyo's innovation hubs, in the solemn halls of Kyoto's shrines, and in the classrooms where the next generation dreams of possibilities unimagined. Japan's future has never been more uncertain, nor more full of potential. The land of the rising sun stands poised to redefine itself yet again, as it has countless times throughout history. The world is watching, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. The empire of culture, in the quietest, most unassuming way, Japan has conquered the world, not through force, but through culture. From the neon-lit streets of Akihabara to living rooms across the globe, Japanese anime, manga, and video games have transcended borders, languages, and generations. Children in New York hum the opening theme of Naruto. Teenagers in Paris cosplay as characters from Attack on Titan. And adults in São Paulo spend weekends exploring vast digital worlds born in Tokyo studios. This is Japan's invisible empire, an empire of imagination, where armies once clashed with swords and cannons. Now art, creativity, and storytelling wage a different kind of war, conquering hearts instead of territories. In a fractured global landscape, Japan has become the bridge of emotion, uniting diverse cultures under the banner of shared wonder. It's a subtle kind of dominance, one that reshapes identity without imposing it, influencing global consciousness in ways that even empires of old could never dream. The language of innovation, but Japan's global power does not stop at pop culture. It thrives at the very edge of human progress. From the invention of the Walkman to the rise of PlayStation, from the world's first bullet train to cutting-edge robotics, Japan has become synonymous with technological elegance. In cities like Osaka and Fukuoka, laboratories hum with breakthroughs in artificial intelligence, renewable energy, and quantum computing. Japan's influence is quiet yet profound. Its advancements in nanotechnology power smartphones worldwide, Its leadership in green hydrogen research promises a future beyond fossil fuels, and its innovations in robot-assisted medicine redefine how humanity cares for the sick and elderly. Yet what makes Japan's technological prowess unique is its philosophy. Innovation, not for dominance, but for harmony. Every invention carries a reflection of its culture, a delicate balance between tradition and futurism, between humanity and machine. Where others seek speed, Japan seeks perfection. Diplomacy through art and values, in an era where power is often measured in military might. Japan wields a different weapon: soft diplomacy. It uses art, culture, and shared values to build influence and alliances across the globe. From Tokyo's cultural festivals hosted in Europe to Japanese language institutes thriving in Africa, Japan exports not just products, but experiences. Its anime consulates, tea ceremonies, and origami workshops aren't just entertainment, they're bridges. Through them, Japan communicates its philosophy of harmony, respect, and coexistence. In Southeast Asia, Japan invests in infrastructure, projects that transform economies. In Latin America, it offers technology partnerships that fuel progress. And in Africa, it shares agricultural innovations that fight hunger. Unlike traditional powers, Japan's influence is rarely confrontational. It's collaborative, a patient reshaping of relationships that leaves nations grateful, not indebted. This is the silent strength of a nation that understands. In a globalized century, hearts and minds are stronger than armies. A global cultural superpower, Japan today stands as one of the world's greatest cultural exporters, shaping global aesthetics and modern identity. From the minimalist elegance of Zen-inspired architecture to the philosophical depth of haiku poetry. From the culinary artistry of sushi and ramen to the immersive storytelling of Studio Ghibli, Japan has redefined what beauty, simplicity, and depth mean to the modern world. Even in fashion, Tokyo's districts like Hiroshu's set trends that ripple through Paris, Milan, and Los Angeles. This cultural renaissance isn't accidental. It is deeply rooted in centuries of artistic philosophy that elevate the small, the fleeting, and the imperfect into masterpieces of human expression. Japan has taught the world to find meaning in silence, joy in impermanence, and beauty in imperfection. And in doing so, it has claimed a timeless kind of relevance, one that transcends politics and survives the rise and fall of global powers. The rising sun in a digital century as humanity accelerates into an age defined by data, artificial intelligence, and global connectivity. Japan finds itself uniquely positioned to lead. Its fusion of ancient wisdom and technological mastery offers a template for a future where progress doesn't sacrifice identity. While nations race toward automation, Japan pioneers human-centered robotics, seeking to complement rather than replace human potential. While others debate sustainability, Japan invests heavily in green technology and disaster-resilient urban planning, lessons forged from the heartbreak of tsunamis and earthquakes. And as the digital revolution reshapes human interaction, Japan continues to be the quiet architect of the tools and platforms powering tomorrow. It is no longer just the land of the rising sun. It is the land of endless possibility. A nation whose soft power and technological vision ripple through every corner of the earth. Its influence, though understated, is inescapable. Shadows. Beneath the rising sun, beneath the shimmering lights of Tokyo's skyscrapers, and the quiet serenity of Kyoto's temples, Japan faces a silent storm. Its population is shrinking, its people are aging, and entire villages in the countryside are slowly disappearing into silence. In some rural prefectures, schools have closed because there are no children left to teach. By 2050, Japan's population may fall by nearly 30 million, reshaping its economy, its labor force, and even its identity. Yet this is not merely a demographic crisis, it is a spiritual one. How does a nation that treasures tradition adapt to a future where those traditions risk fading with the generations that carry them? And yet, in this quiet battle, there is a strength uniquely Japanese, a refusal to surrender, a determination to find harmony within inevitability. The shadows are real, but so is the unbreakable light behind them. Lessons from the ashes. If history has taught us anything, it is this: Japan does not break. In 1945, two mushroom clouds turned cities into deserts. Yet from that devastation rose the world's third-largest economy. In 2011, the Tohoku earthquake unleashed a tsunami that swallowed towns and caused one of the worst nuclear disasters in history. But within days, volunteers flooded the streets, rebuilding homes, restoring power, and comforting strangers as if they were family. This is Kizuna, the Japanese spirit of unity, where collective resilience outshines personal suffering. Japan's story is not one of uninterrupted triumph, but of a people who rise again and again, refusing to let disaster define them. The world watches this quiet endurance with awe. Because Japan carries within its soul a lesson humanity often forgets, that even in the deepest ruin, there is rebirth. A future forged in innovation, faced with its demographic and economic dilemmas. Japan has turned toward innovation as both shield and sword. Robotics labs develop caregiving machines that tend to the elderly with empathy coded into their movements. Smart cities powered by renewable energy rise where once rural towns declined. Japan is leading research in quantum computing, hydrogen energy, and space exploration, preparing humanity for challenges beyond Earth. But even as it reaches for the stars, Japan looks inward, asking, how do we preserve what makes us, us? This balance between tradition and transformation defines Japan's next chapter. It is not a race to become someone else's version of the future. It is a journey to craft a uniquely Japanese tomorrow, the world's silent architect in an age of rising tensions and fractured alliances. Japan stands as a silent architect of stability. Its constitution renounces war, yet it builds diplomatic bridges from Asia to Africa, Europe to the Americas. Through investments, cultural exchanges, and technological partnerships, Japan reshapes the global order without confrontation. Its leadership in climate action, renewable technologies, and sustainable development earns it respect beyond its size. And while other powers seek dominance, Japan seeks balance, a future where collaboration triumphs over conflict. This understated approach has made Japan one of the world's most trusted nations. A quiet force that whispers where others shout, yet achieves more by doing less. The eternal rising sun. And so, as the camera drifts across the snow-dusted peaks of Mount Fuji, the torii gates of Itsukushima, and the crimson glow of Tokyo's skyline, one truth becomes clear: Japan's story is far from over. It is a nation that remembers its past, but refuses to be chained by it. It carries its wounds not as burdens, but as badges of wisdom, sculpting a future where fragility and strength coexist. The world looks to Japan not just for technology, art, or culture, but for hope. In an age of uncertainty, Japan reminds us that resilience is beautiful, that impermanence is not the end but the essence of life, and that, even after the darkest nights, the sun will always rise again. Because in the heart of Japan lives an eternal promise that no matter how many times the world falls apart, it can always be rebuilt, better, brighter, and more alive than before.